Okay, here we go once again on the Meat and Potato Show, conservative talk and awesome rock. I am your host, Christopher Mader, and once again, we got great guests always calling into the show. My guest tonight, we're gonna do away with the diatribe tonight because we just got to get right into this. This is going to be an incredible interview tonight. He is an author and writer. He wrote The Failure of the Church and a chronology of end times events. He's the executive director at Tea Party Conservatives for Freedom and director at Collegium Bible Institute. I actually had to take a second to read that. Collegium Bible Institute. My good guest tonight on the Meat and Potato Show, Mark David Shaw. We're going to talk about his Alinsky videos that he's been putting out on YouTube. I've been watching a lot of those. You want to talk about, getting a quick study on what Alinsky and what our administration here today is all about. Go on that, and we're going to post it up on the video here when we produce it here on the Meat and Potato Show. My great guest tonight, Mark David Shaw. I could go on, but Mark David, thank you so much for coming on to the show. Mark David Shaw, thank you so much.
Hey, I'm happy to be here, and I thank you for the opportunity.
So let's get right directly into the interview here. Your videos on Alinsky have gone viral. I'm posting them. I'm watching them. This is like a simple Alinsky 101 classroom, isn't it, sir?
Yes. In fact, what I like to do with any subject is I like to go to the very foundation of what is being said, and what this does is it has a way of simplifying the arguments and simplifying the things that are being posited. And it also simplifies any retort that needs to be offered with regard to that particular philosophy. So I try to make it as simple as possible rather than dealing with some of the complex issues. When we understand the foundation, the complex isn't necessary. And so we go into Saul Alinsky and his life, and we go into those things that he said. And of course, before I study a person's writings, I have to study the person. Because, a rule, or, as this book is known as, Rules for Radicals, a rule can mean one thing to one person and something completely else to another. And so what I wanted to do is find out exactly what Saul Alinsky meant when he spoke those rules and wrote them down in his book. And by doing that, we get a good indication of what he means by it, because Saul Alinsky himself, as a man, has a particular worldview, and that worldview influences and drives his actions.
Now, I've read some Marx. I've got a couple of books over here. I've read some of it. I can't actually get through it because of my intrinsic belief in American exceptionalism. I can't get through it sometimes. I have to return to it at times. I know it's wise to know the ways of one's enemy, but where does this come from? The question I want to ask you is, why do these people think this way, that the destruction of freedom and republic somehow is a means to an end, somehow will lead to a better type of life? We live here in our republic here in America, and we know this is the greatest thing ever on the history of civilization ever, yet there are these people out there that seem to think, oh, wait, no, we've got a better way. Really? Seriously? Where does this come from, Mark?
Well, I think as a philosophy, it's a very good question, by the way. I think that as any type of a worldview or any type of a teaching or a doctrine, one has to look at it from a spiritual perspective. You just can't look at it from a mere positive point of view. In fact, I think Saul Alinsky answers that for us when he dedicated his book to Lucifer, whom he called the first rebel. and so that pretty much tells me where he's going with his different philosophies.
Really?
Now,
remember? I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead. No, go ahead, sir. Please. I'm sorry.
Um, no, go ahead. I was at the end anyway. That's
Well,
fine.
do you remember in the movie Doctor Zhivago, where he comes home and his house is filled with people, and the Russian prefect says to him, "You have a big house. You are a doctor. You have wealth and money. This house could fill up all these people." And then he realizes it's like, well, yeah, but this is my house. I paid for it. I built it. I did everything. I'm a doctor. I have, this is my house. But he has to somehow default to them. And then there's that scene in the movie where he walks up the stairs and he goes up to his room, which is just a room in his house. And this is what communism does. This is what socialism does. This is what that equal distribution of wealth does. Is not only does it, I mean, the poor will say, "Oh, but we deserve this. This is our share." But what they don't understand is that it takes away from everybody else, doesn't it, sir?
Yes, it does. And I would ask the poor to tell me upon what premise do you make that statement. A lot of times people don't think through what they're actually saying. And so, that's where I go back to foundations. Upon what moral principle are you making that statement that as a poor person, you deserve the labor of someone else, whether they're rich, middle class, doesn't matter. Upon what principle do you base that? Because every principle that I can find, that is theft, and we have laws against that. And I'd like to just distill it down to a simple argument where I live in a house, and I have a neighbor on my left who is poor, and he has one goat, and I have a neighbor on my right who is rich, and he has 1,000 goats. And so I go to my rich neighbor, and I take 10 of his goats and give it to my poor neighbor. Now, in every country in the world, that's theft. I could be arrested for stealing somebody else's property. Each person has an inalienable right to their own property. And for a poor person or a have-not or whoever it is, they don't have that right to take by force property from someone to whom it belongs, whether they earned it themselves or whether it was inherited. It doesn't matter. If it's their possession, I don't have a right to it, and neither does anyone else.
Mark, I will ask this question, playing devil's advocate here, but
Sure.
I actually believe in this myself, sir. Is this not part of what evolution is? Is that, if you don't get up and stand up and do it, and get out there and work and make and do, then it's on your head. The guy who has 1,000 goats, he didn't get that by, well, maybe some kids today, yeah, we got daddy's trust fund. I'm talking the original get up and go attitude. The guy who gets up and says, "I've got an idea, I'm going to work my butt off and just make it happen," and then boom, he gets rich, he somehow makes it and gets rich. Suddenly the poor person is like, "I want something I want part of what you have." Well, I'm sorry, I'm on that evolutionary chain. I came up with an idea because I'm smart, and I worked my way through it because I'm physically strong and I can do that, and then I went out and did it because I'm smart and physically strong. Therefore, I deserve what I attained. You are just sitting around lamenting and crying in your beer and just being whatever it is you're doing. Isn't that part of evolution? It's like, this is what we're supposed to do as human beings. We're always supposed to grow and get to that next step to do that. Whereas other people who just don't have that, I'm going to be devil's advocate. Isn't that part of evolution?
Admittedly, I'm on the other side of the fence with regard to evolution. I think that an evolution philosophy would undermine a universal moral standard. And a universal moral standard is really what we base our entire government upon, belongs to you. It's your possession. You acquired it legally. Then nobody else has a right to take that property from you. It would be immoral. Doesn't matter what your station in life is. It doesn't matter whether you're a trillionaire or you're a thousandaire. It's still your property. I base that on a biblical model as well, because even in the scriptures we're told to exhort the rich to share with the poor. Nowhere did it say to take from the rich.
Right.
It said exhort them.
Right.
Make it easy for them to give to the poor.
That's right.
Because it has to be a free will offering or it's theft.
Well, that's why I said I was playing devil's advocate. I was just throwing a something out there, but you actually answered the question actually succinctly, because this is right. I mean, everything that we own and everything that we are is by our own hard work, even by inheritance. It's by the hard work of our parents, and there are many children out there who have worked hard, working with their parents. I'm sure in your family it's the same thing. It's the same thing in my family. But today in America, we have this entitlement mentality. We have this hand-me-down mentality. And I'm wondering if, there's the parable about, in Israel, about how, that Abraham had all the sheep, he had all the flocks, he had his servants and everything else. And then the Philistines came in and they said, no, we're going to fill up your wells with sand. It's like, look, I've worked for all of this, and yes, I'm passing it on to my children because my children worked, and even if the children didn't work, the children had to suffer because they don't get to spend time with dad. Why? Because dad's working all the time. That's why. Children can lament about their father. No, dad didn't ever spend time with you. But guess what? You got a roof over your head. You got shoes on your feet, and you got a hot meal on you. That's dad. That's your dad's love. And then what ends up happening is we have these other people coming along saying, "Oh, you didn't work for that. Oh no, it was handed to you. Oh no, give me some of that." This is what's happening in America today, isn't it, sir?
Yes, it is. And I would go to even to contend with people that say Jesus was a liberal or he was a communist. It is a fallacious argument on its face. And I ask anyone to show me in the scriptures where Jesus coerced anybody to give them anything.
He said, "Come." He said, "Come."
It was
That was
based
it.
on a free will offering. And so to suggest that they're doing the work of God, and this is why they frame their arguments that they're doing the work of God by feeding the poor. You're not feeding the poor. You're stealing from somebody to feed the poor. That's completely different. That is something that we would call immoral.
Well, now what we've done here in America is we've replaced God and Constitution with state, haven't we, Mark?
Absolutely.
Go ahead, take it over.
We've got a status mentality.
Go ahead, take it. Please, keep going.
Well, what we have to do, and I think this is important, and we have leaders in our country, in our government, that think in a socialist manner because we have people that think in a socialist manner. And so the problem, to attack the problem, we have to educate the people. We have to give them these cogent arguments that undermines their philosophies. People can think that they're doing something good because they don't actually take the argument to its end result. But when you force them into taking their position to its end, then they're faced with an immoral proposition that they now have to support. And people, when are a lot less willing to support a proposition that's immoral than something that they were unaware of to start with. So I like to make people aware of the immorality of the system, which gives them the freedom to make a change in their thinking. And they may not make that change all at once, but at least I've awakened their conscience
No, that's true though.
Yes, and when we look at how we, I mean, my own daughter, my first daughter, she was coming up to a driving age, and my father wanted to give her a car, and I said, Mom, I don't want to give her a car. She won't take care of it. She won't value it. Make her pay for it. He said, nope, I'm going to give it to her. I said, okay, you're pop. I'll do what you want. But she had that car tore up in a couple of years. See, it's just human nature that if we don't accept, I mean, if we don't work for what we have a tendency not to value it as much.
I have lived my entire life. I'm sorry. I say this on the Meat and Potato Show many times. It's like beating a dead horse. I grew up poor. I mean, I did not have the. I was not the greatest student in high school, and of course, I ended up dropping out. But once I did that, I realized, like, almost like boom, like a lightning bolt. It's like, well, you've got to get your you-know-what together and get your acting gear. And a year later, I did. I owned my own car. I saved money. I just put I put the rubber to the road. I just did what I had to do. And it has been a stalwart anchor in my entire life. Everything I've ever done in my entire life has been, all right, you're going to do it? Let's go do it. I mean, I have gray hair on my head. You got gray hair on your head. I mean, Mark, you've probably done the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like you just go and do it. And, and I wonder where, and I was at a time when I actually was at those last dying days of a great education here in the United States, and I didn't take advantage of it. And so I had to catch up afterwards, and I just told you the story. Whereas today, I mean, we live in a time where, I mean, it's the dumbest thing, it's the dumbest education, and we still have kids dropping out. It's like, wait a minute, and I know you and I disagree on evolution, but I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, what is happening to us evolutionary-wise? I mean, really, seriously, are our kids getting, is something going on? Are our brains getting, what is happening here? I mean, I know it's the family, the breakup, all this other stuff, but I'm wondering if it's actually having a physical, biological effect on our children. Go ahead, sir.
Now, that's hard to say whether it's biological or not. I would suggest that part of it is engendered by the people who are in charge of education. In order to do what they want to do, they have to have a dumbed-down public. And I think they've paid so much attention to the child's feelings, and they've been playing psychological games with our children rather than educating them, that they've come out with these philosophies. In fact, there's a professor in Harvard. He was a professor of the religious department in Harvard, and he made the statement that in the 70s, 80s, maybe even part of the 90s, I think it was, that if he asked his students in first year in college if they believed in an absolute truth, and he would get at least about 50% that still believed in an absolute truth. And he said by the year 2010, thereabouts, you ask a child that coming out of high school, and it's almost 100%. Nope, believes in an absolute truth. Now, that is an indoctrination that's taking place on a school level with our children. And when people don't have anything to believe in, absolutely, then they're left with just being manipulated by their experiences. So that if their experiences are not doing too well, then they move towards socialism. If they experience they are doing well, then they move toward a conservative point of view. And so they're all over the map because they don't have a solid foundation.
One of the things I did just a little while ago about in my YouTube channel here, it's about it's a video about. I'm actually trying to look. I'm not going to go through it here, but there's a piece that was put out, and it's on the YouTube playlist on the Meat and Potato Show about is something rational, or is it evil, or is it good? I mean, we can talk about rationality. Obviously, there are things in this world that are rational, and then in the video it goes on. Well, is this an act of evil or is this an act of good? And I thought to myself as I'm watching this video that this is how we are today. We tend to rationalize things in our world, and this is part of the indoctrination. I have tried to raise my children as best as I can, but even they are slanted by what they have to deal with every day out there in the world. They're grown up now. They have to go to work and every day. And they're hit with that, the sense of, well, this is rational. But even in their minds they're saying, but this isn't the right thing to do. It's not the right thing to do. And we look at our government doing this. We look at our senators, our congressmen, always, they're doing what is rational. They're doing what they think is right, but it's not right, is it? Go ahead, Mark.
No, and you just described utilitarianism, which as a doctrine is stated that the end of all action should be the greatest happiness of the greatest number.
Right.
And so a utilitarian worldview lends itself to this type of thinking, where people just don't have the foundation. In other words, we have a lot in common with regard to how we grew up. We didn't grow up in rich families by any means. We were taught to work hard. We were taught to never take from another,
Right.
but to work hard and to give to others rather than take. And so you look at our experiences, and our experiences make us what we are today. But our experiences, if we don't measure them with a solid moral standard, then again, I go back to the question, upon what do we base that action upon if we do not any longer have a moral standard that transcends humanity itself? Again, I go back to the Declaration of Independence. If there is no creator, if there is no God, then there is no inalienable rights. And if there are no inalienable rights, then humanism rules the day. Secular humanism, where we make up the rules as we go.
Yeah.
Today that might be wrong, but tomorrow, hey, it's acceptable.
Well,
So,
go ahead, Tom.
go ahead.
One of the things I've been broadcasting on my show, I've done a multi-part expose here on the Meat and Potato Show about Article 5, Convention of States, and many people are pushing for a total rewrite of our U.S. Constitution. And I'm looking at the history of these people, their educations, where they are, and never mind the outlandish things they say about changing the Constitution. That stuff's all in my blog site. I'm looking at the people themselves, their history, their upbringing, their education, and these are all secular people. They are humanists, like you said, Unitarian, utilitarian. They have that mentality, and in their minds, they think, oh, we're looking out for the greater good, but they're not looking out for the individual. And there's a big push going on here in the United States to change our Constitution, to amend the Constitution, and looking at the caliber of individual that is in our Congress and Senate. I know we just won a new election. We'll see how that goes. But still, the caliber of individual that is in our Congress and Senate looking to change and read our Constitution, we are, I mean, the devil is here. Satan is here, and he's poised. I mean, his fangs are dripping with saliva. He's just, we are that close, aren't we, sir?
Yes, and that particular movement scares me, not so much because of the leaders, but because of the culture. Obviously, I think you have to have two-thirds a threshold.
You need two-thirds, and then eventually it goes back to the states for three-quarters. I've done tons of research on this. It's
three-quarters. Okay.
Yeah, it's three-quarters of the states who have to actually agree once Congress does that. That's the only That's the only, I don't know.
Safety pin.
Yeah, safety pin. Thank you.
That's the only
Safe.
safety pins.
Yeah, exactly.
But
Go
I would
ahead.
say this. I would say that it's scary because I can't trust this culture today. I think Charles Montesquieu nailed it with regard to, of course, this was a man who was well read by our founders. When he talked about a monarchy needs to teach its people honor. But in a republic, you need to teach the people virtue. And he defined virtue as love of country. And what we see that's happened in the past 40 years, 30, 40 years, is we've been teaching our children not to love this country, to become apologists and say that we're wrong and we did all this evil in the world. And so they don't love country and they don't take pride in what we stand for. And so when that exists in a country, I think it's very dangerous to open up the Constitution to allow those hands to rewrite something that our founders laid down for us.
I was speaking today to a friend of ours that we were driving around, and it was crazy. We were having a conversation about driving and that there's so many people out there driving, and I had made the statement, and I know it's going to sound wrong here, but this is meat and potatoes and we are a no apologies network. What I had said is that, you know what, you have a lot of illegals driving around and they don't care. And it's not that they don't care, like, oh, I don't care. Well, actually, no, yeah, it is. They don't care. And they'll hit your car or get in an accident and they'll just drive away. Because you and I, normal Americans, will be like, oh, I'm sorry, sir. Oh, are you all right? Oh, are you okay? Oh, yeah. Oh, all right, here's my information. Yeah, we'll get the insurance. Please show up. Make sure that there's nothing wrong. Is everyone okay? We go through a process. We live in a country now where there's so many illegals and so many people in this country who just don't, and I'm going to say it, sir, and I know you're a Christian, I am too, but they don't give a fuck about what the hell's going on here in the United States. They don't care about our Constitution. They don't care about our laws. Hell, they came here illegally anyway, so why should they care? And now they're out there, and we get in accidents, people get hurt. It's constantly in the news. This is part of what Alinsky was saying, though, about overwhelming. Let them in, overwhelm the system, bring them all in. And then it just turns into this swamp, this mess of, and then we educate, or we try to educate them, or they educate us, and then everything that is or was American exceptionalism just gets bleached out in laundry, and it's just this gray-white shirt. It's like, yes, this is America, it's a gray-white shirt, and it represents everybody, or it doesn't represent everybody, or whatever. With this neutrality nation, we're just like everybody else, and the entire concept of American exceptionalism is gone, isn't it, sir?
I would say yes for with regard to the majority. I think what we're doing is we're transitioning into a democracy where it's ruled by majority, and sometimes it's even ruled by minority if you have a large enough voice and deep enough pockets. But what we see with regard to the immigration problem is that these people go to work and they work a regular job and they get paid, and they always put enough dependence on their W-4s to make sure that they're not hit with any income taxes. But the dirty little secret is one of the taxes you can't get out of is your Social Security taxes. And so here you have a bunch of people paying into Social Security who then cannot draw from the system without being caught. So this is an income source to the government, and so to get the government to do something about it, I think is going to be really difficult.
Oh, I hadn't looked at that angle. Oh my God,
Yeah.
Mark, thank you. Oh God. You know, I do this show. I've done this show since 2008. I thought I had all my ducks in a row. Every time I do this show, I learn something new. I had not thought of that angle. Oh my God. So that's, again, getting back to what you said about theft. We're even thieving from the illegals, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh.
And of course, the Democrats
They're stealing from the illegals on their Social Security tax. And this is, here's the thing. We all know this, and you know your political history, and I do too. Yeah, Bill Clinton balanced the budget because he took all the money out of Social Security. We all know that, to balance the budget. And therefore, Social Security is no longer this separate thing. Oh, I'm paying into my Social Security to protect me when I turn 65 or 68 or whatever. No, it's just another tax. That's what happened. And so now we're thieving. You just made the great point. Yeah, they can get away with federal tax. They might even get away with state tax. They can get away, they can always fudge around with that. But the FICA, the FICA, and ME, or whatever the hell it's called, they can't get away with that. So therefore, we're actually stealing from the... Oh, my God.
Yeah. And by the way, some of these people that are illegal, they came over here to try to better their families abroad. And part of the problem, too, is America has had a system, and I'm not taking by any means the illegal position, just to let everybody know. But so many of them have not been able to get in this country because of our immigration laws. You either had to be a student or you had to go into the military. And so we really didn't have a worker program where people could come across the border and work for a season and then go back home. So I think that would be a good idea. And then control the numbers with regard to our own economy. Make sure we have Americans at full employment before we bring illegals across the border. But it's right now, the way they're just gaming the system right now.
We're going to end up in bankruptcy. Well, we all know we're going to end up in bankruptcy. As a Christian yourself, the future of America. We've banned God in courts. We've banned God in state houses, city halls, banned God in schools, our children, the education. We practically banned it everywhere. Yet, at the same time, we are placating Islam because, we want them to like us. We want to show them that we're an open society and we respect everyone's rights and everyone's will. Do you see where I'm going here, Mark?
Yeah, and that's one of the things that's dear to my heart, because the so-called separation of church and state, of course, that's not in the Constitution. The Constitution doesn't read that way.
That's right.
The First Amendment. And when you look at Thomas Jefferson, I often like to say this, when he replied to the Baptists with regard to their question, and mentioned separation of church and state, that very next Sunday, I think he finished the letter on a Friday, that very next Sunday, he went to church in the Capitol building.
That's right.
It doesn't, for people to say that he wanted to secularize government and completely take God out of government, that wasn't the thing. What they were concerned about, what our founders were concerned about, and we can read about this when Thomas Jefferson deals with it in Virginia, because they were wanting to make a particular Christian denomination the official church of that state. And he wrote and came against that, but he didn't come against Christianity as a religion.
Right.
And so obviously we have a government today that has reinterpreted the Constitution, reinterpreted these amendments. It says Congress shall make no law. Okay, my first question is, and I'm a simple guy, I get on the tractor and I went and plowed some fields in my day, and I find that the people that have not been in academia usually are the ones that have the common sense left, even though I'm a part of academia now. But I think of it like this. It's really simple to me. Who was that amendment written to? It states, Congress shall make no law regarding the establishment of religion, nor is it prohibit the free exercise thereof.
Thank you.
So this amendment was addressed to one particular body in our government system. And now we want to try to remove every semblance of Christianity from all branches of government, state and federal. And
here's
And so that's what's great about having a transcendent system of morality where we can appeal to that we are all under with regard to our legislation. And our laws, I get a kick out of people who say you can't legislate morality. Well, it depends on what you mean by that statement, but I would suggest that we already do. We have laws against murder, laws against stealing. Those are moral issues.
Sure, right.
And so you can't get away from the moral foundation of law. Law must be in place, and it goes back to, I think, I like the definition of freedom that I came up with. People think today that liberty or freedom is the right to do anything you want. And that was never the thought of our founders. Our founders, I think, would say it this way: freedom is the right to govern yourself. And the moment you don't govern yourself, then the law is there to bring you into compliance. And I think that's an accurate statement of what liberty and freedom it really is.
I'm going to bring you back a little bit to your original opening statement, is that Congress shall make no law. In fact, this entire concept of, we should decide. Something should be done about this. We need to get Congress involved. We need to pass a law. Excuse me, folks. It says explicitly, Congress shall make no law prohibiting, the freedom of religion, the free expression thereof. Therefore, Congress has absolutely no place in actually deciding any of that. This is what Thomas Jefferson was talking about, the separation of church and state, is that
Absolutely.
the state has no voice in this. It's like you're asking Congress, you're asking the government, you got to pass a law. Thomas Jefferson is scratching his head. It's like, wait a minute, don't you understand? We have no say in this. This is for you guys to figure out. This is for you, your state, your community, your town, the neighbor next to you, the next neighbor. This is your problem. You guys figure that out. This is not part of our law, but that's where we are, aren't we, Mark? Congress is making those laws. Constituent groups are pushing Congress to make these laws. The Supreme Court is making these laws. I'm reading Mark Levin's book, Mark Levine, I'm sorry, his Liberty Amendments book. And this is what they're doing. This is the Supreme Court is becoming an advocacy group of not just the government, but they're becoming an advocacy group of, advocates, aren't they?
Yes, they are. And I think they've been allowed to do that because, again, of the dumbing down of America with regard to their government. The Supreme Court is not the final say. And many people think that whatever the Supreme Court says, that's the final say. That is not true. If it were true, then we are an oligarchy. We are not a constitutional republic. The opinions of those 9 people can never be completely absolute with regard to how we govern this country. Else we are no longer a republic. There are things in place where each branch of government can be overturned with regard to what they're trying to do. That was the genius of our founders to start with. And so when we understand that the Supreme Court's not the final say then we can go back to Congress and say, this is what the Supreme Court said. You need to legislate against what they said, and that was how things were overturned. Congress would just write another law and legislate against what the courts decided. But we don't do that anymore, as if that's something that's off limits.
I want to switch gears here a little bit. Do you hear people saying to you about your opinions and your constitutionalities, your belief in God and, republic itself, I'm talking about our nation, that it's antiquated, it isn't in vogue, it's not, it doesn't fit in with our democracy today? Do you hear anybody saying that to you? And
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure I hear it too. The question is how do you deal with that on an intellectual basis? How do you respond to that?
Well, actually, that's a logical fallacy on its face, because where is the rule that because something is old, it's no longer useful? So that's the assumption of the statement. And I always tell my students, if you want to defeat an argument, look for the assumptions in the argument. So when people make the statement, well, that's antiquated. Well, I said, wait, stop right there. Where is your premise that because something's old, it's no longer useful? Because I would suggest to you that if something's old and it's worked for that long, we best keep it in place because it's something that works.
A hammer.
And so I take them to, for instance, how long has it been stated that murder of innocent people is wrong? Now, based on your argument, because it's antiquated, it's no longer usable. And so your argument fails from its premise because it's based on a false assumption.
Exactly. I call it the hammer theory. It's like a hammer's been around since I don't know, ancient Babylonia. I mean, it's like what because it's antiquated, therefore it's no longer a useful tool. It's like, are you serious, really? And I know it's a simple analogy, but it actually applies to everything else that and these are moral grounds that we're talking about. These aren't just constitutional Declaration of Independence, Magna Carta, John Locke's theories, Alexis de Tocqueville's theories on democracy and freedoms. These aren't things that are, oh that was nice to, well, isn't that nice? We consider them like classic novels or something or other. No, these are absolute truths. These are things, and we could talk about the Federalist Papers, or we can even talk about the Anti-Federalist Papers. These are absolute truths that exist in our society, and this is probably why liberalism in America has such a hard time living with people like you and I. Is that they can't get around the concept of individualism and inalienability. It's like, you don't understand. You don't get to tell me what to do. You don't get to tell me how to live or what to burn in my stove or eat in my breakfast table or anything else, or even what car I want to drive. And never mind registration and inspection stickers and everything else that you guys want to tax me on. You don't have those rights to do any of that, because I exist and do because I am here by God. God put me here. Therefore, I'm just allowed with these inalienable rights. I'm allowed to live and breathe and do and create and grow and be the best person I am, because you and I know, Mark, because in the Bible it says that, sloth, avarice, you don't, God put you here, and then he says to you, okay, go, make something of yourself.
Be fruitful and multiply.
Yes,
be fruitful. I think what you're going to is the very premise of civil government. And again, we're not allowed to teach the very premise of civil government because it would require us to go into the Bible to actually extract it. Which is this. It's very simple. And by the way, this is why I'm very cautious to tell people I don't believe in human rights. I believe in individual rights. I don't believe in group rights. I believe in individual rights. That's equality across the board.
Right.
And government is supposed to, the foundation of government is supposed to protect those rights. Now, when God created man, he said, let us give them dominion. Well, that's interesting, because if I have dominion and you have dominion and everybody else has dominion, then that means we don't have the right to dominate each other. So
right.
We have an inalienable right to not be dominated by other human beings. Now, government is a system where people agree to live under particular laws in order to protect their rights and to protect their property. So they agree to that system, which means that government is not the power. The people is the power. And this is why our Constitution starts with we, the people. We
started you on this multi-part expose that you've done? I've got them all stored up on the Meat and Potatoes Facebook page. I've been storing them on my YouTube channel too, and they're archived here because I work and I'm doing the show. I don't always have the time to always watch them, but I get back to them and I watch what you put on there. What started you doing this? I mean, it's a great video. We talk about an incredible video expose. And folks, I'm going to put up the link on this interview on the YouTube channel. Everything is there on the Meat and Potatoes YouTube show. And of course, go to Mark Shaw's show. I'm telling you, man, it's really great. What started you just deciding to do this about Alinsky?
Well, I got to say, it wasn't my idea.
No,
I was asked to do it by the co-CEO of Restoring America Together Network, Mona Bree Johnson. I did a welcome video. I do curriculum production. I have my own studio, and we do videos, and we develop curriculum. And so I was developing some curriculum one day, and I decided, well, I'm going to do a welcome video since I got everything set up, and I'm actually dressed up. I still like wearing farmer clothes, and so I did the video, the Tea Party welcome, and when the CEOs saw it, they said, "Oh, we love this. Would you do something on Saul Alinsky?" And I said, that's actually a really good idea. And so, I mean, I was familiar somewhat with Alinsky's model, but I wasn't, I hadn't researched it. So they asked me to do it, and so that's what got me started.
That's funny that you say that, because I've been doing a whole expose on Article 5, and it was the same thing. The idea was put out to me, and I was like, Article 5, Convention of the States. Yeah, I know. Oh, about changing the Constitution. Oh, yeah. Well, would you like to maybe interview somebody? I was like, okay. So, yeah, it's so funny. And isn't it funny, though, Mark, how you've done these? I watch your videos. Folks, I'm going to post all the stuff up. You got to see these videos. They're absolutely incredible. And I'm not going to say that my videos are incredible, but it's the same thing. You have that catharsis where it's like you start researching and you start learning. And this is what I do here on the Meat and Potato Show. It's like I've got to introduce a guest. I gotta research their stuff. I'm looking at their stuff, and then it's like, oh wait, there's this link. And I know it sounds like ADHD, but it's like I go off on this tangent that you or somebody else has posted on there, and it's like, oh my God, I never realized this. And then it's so amazing when somebody asks you to do something. Folks, don't ever say no. Just say yes and go do it. Just go do it, because Mark's done it, and he's got these great videos on YouTube. I do the Meat and Potato Show because people say, "Hey, Chris, go do this thing," and it's like, okay, and then I just go do it. Mark, I'm gonna say this. It's my show, and we are a No Apologies Network here. But isn't this kind of like God, kind of like touching you on the shoulder, saying, "Yeah, go do that"?
Oh, no question about it.
Yeah,
I agree
really,
100% with
really.
that. I believe that every single human being is put on this planet with an assignment to accomplish something. And we got to look for those open doors and opportunities and just take them. And if I believe sincerely that if God wants me to go through that door, he'll keep it wide open. And if he doesn't, he'll shut it.
Yeah, right.
And so I believe 100% that every one of us has a destiny and has a purpose, has a reason for being here. And it doesn't have to always revolve around church or religion. There are people called to be doctors and soldiers and police officers and generals and even politicians. So, I'm all for that.
Exactly. And there we go. Mark, thank you so much for calling into the show. Sir, thank you so much. Give your website, give your information to my audience out there. Again, I'm going to post everything up when I do the video. Everything's going to go on there. Go ahead, Mark.
Okay, the YouTube channel is Restoring America Together Network, all one word, and then you can pull up all the videos. We have a website as well, restoringamericatogether.net, and of course you can find our Tea Party group on the internet. We're called Tea Party Conservatives for Freedom. We're at about 23
Yeah.
500 members in
Yep.
there.
I'm a member of that page. Yeah, great. In fact, that's where I met you. And this gets me back to God. Listen, the show, my show has had a slow incremental growth, and I want it to be that way. I mean, I could post up cat licking videos, and we'll get a million hits, and then tomorrow we're dead in the water. But the Meat and Potato Show, even probably like even your stuff that you're doing, it's slow. It grows over time. You meet one person, you meet two people, you meet three people, and they tell other people, and so on and so forth. And this is what has brought me to meet you, is that just by, you said Tea Party Conservatives for Freedom, right there on Facebook. It's part of the everything that I do here on my show. That's one of the Facebook groups I belong to, and that's how I watched your stuff. Just by hook and crook. I was going through, surfing through, and I looked at that, and I was like, I gotta get this guy on my show. That's what I'm talking about. God, that 6 degrees of separation. Whatever you want to call it, Kismet, Sting, and when he was in the Police, he called it the song Synchronicity. We're supposed to meet. We're supposed to be here. And Mark, thank you so much for coming on to the show. And I can't wait to get you back on the show. I'm going to post up all your stuff. Thank you again so much for taking this time out tonight.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I really, truly appreciate it. I don't solicit this stuff, and so I really appreciate the opportunity to get the message out there. So thank you.
No, one of the things we do here is we do solicit the stuff, because this is what I do here on the show. Is when I find great people like yourself, a great theologian, a great author like yourself, the stuff that you've been doing. I mean, this stuff's got to be shared. And you're not going to get on Fox. You're not going to get on CNN. No one wants to care. But here on M&P 2012, you're going to have an open voice. And we're going to book you again for another couple of weeks down the road. And we're going to have you on again and again and again. And Mark Shaw, thank you so much for coming on to the show.
Thank you, Chris. Loved it.
Good night, sir.
Good night.
See that? Simple phone. Simple cell phone. That's all you do. That's all you do. You call people. Contact them on Facebook. This is what I mean about God. Yeah, we have the technology. Yeah, we got all that stuff. It's by hook and crook. It's by chance. Quite literally, I met this guy by chance. And I invited him to the show. And he accepted. Do you see where I'm going here? It's by God. It really is. Which is why, on the Meat and Potato Show, I always say, by God's will. And only by God's will. It really is. Ladies and gentlemen, Christopher Maynard, the Meat and Potato Show, Conservative Talk.